Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. My name is Millennial Farizi. NIM D400 18 41 57. This is my PowerPoint. About synchronous and asynchronous AC motor. Concept map. Number 1, working principle. Number 2, components. Number 3, star delta series. Number 4, calculation formulas. Number 5, problem example. Number 6, application. Working principle. Working principle of synchronous motor. How a synchronous motor works depends on the interaction of the stator magnetic field with rotor magnetic field. The stator contains three-phase windings and is supplied with three-phase power. Thus, the stator winding produces a three-phase rotating magnetic field. DC supply is given to the rotor. The rotor enters the rotating magnetic field produced by the rotor winding and rotates in synchronization. Now, the speed of the motor depends on the frequency of the current provided. Working principle of asynchronous motors. If the induction motor is given a three-phase voltage source, then the stator coil will flow current to the stator. Current on the stator gives rise to a magnetic field. Current flowing on the conductor will produce magnetic field according to Oersted law. Three-phase currents will cause a rotating magnetic field because the current that flows is alternating current AC. The direction of magnetic field change, and because it uses a three-phase current, it is as if a magnetic field arises that rotates around the stator. Component. Synchronous motor components. Rotor. The main difference between synchronous motors and induction motors is that synchronous engine rotors run at the same speed as the rotation of magnetic field. This is possible because the rotor magnetic field is no longer induced. Stator produces a rotating magnetic field that is proportional to the frequency supplied. Number 2, asynchronous motor components. Stator is a part that is stationary and has a coil that can induce an electromagnetic field to the rotor coil. Gap is an air gap where energy is transferred from stator to rotor. It is a moving part due to the magnetic induction of the stator coil, which is induced to the rotor coil. Star delta series. Star delta circuit. Star circuit Y is a series of electrical loads that have values of phase neutral voltage and interphase voltage. Star circuits have V1N, V2N, and V3N phase neutral voltage values. In addition to voltage has a value of phase neutral voltage, also has a value of phase voltage of interphase voltage V12, V23, and V31. The series of triangles. The ends of the load are connected to each other. Terminal U1 and W2 are integrated with the source of L1 phase U2 and V1 are combined with the source of the L2 phase. P2 and W1 are combined with L3 phase. Each source is coupled with an ampere meter to measure the amount of current T1 and T2 and T3. In the starter delta circuit on synchronous motor is when the synchronous star motor is connected only requires less number of revolution and in the delta connection and when less insulation so it easier grounded and when the connection delta then the motor will be more stable and also when the delta connection will be divided to so it will be safer. That is analysis of star delta circuits and synchronous motor. Analysis of star delta circuits in an asynchronous motor. In the star delta circuit, the asynchronous motor aims to minimize the induced current that occurs when the motor is operated. In this connection operates in rotation. When first operated, the starling will run so that the current surge when starting can be minimized because the incoming current must pass through two windings on starling. This is drawing of star circuit and this is drawing of delta circuit. Now so this is wiring diagram star delta. The formula of the synchronous and asynchronous motor. This is all the formula. Calculation formula. Example of synchronous motor problem: a three-phase synchronous generator 2000 kVA 3 to 300 volts works at full load with a power factor of 0.85. Direct current resistance of the winding at 75 Celsius between 0.08 ohms pace. The field draws a current of 72 amperes at a voltage of 125 volts from the gain equipment. Wind and shear loss 18.8 kW, core loss 37.6 kW, target load loss 2.2 kW. Calculate efficiency by assuming effective answer resistance 1.3 direct current resistance. Settlement. This is the formula of example synchronous motor problem. This is example of asynchronous motor problem. An induction motor of 3-phase 25 HP 0.8 power factor lagging with a star connection. 4 poles 60 Hz connected to a 460 volt voltage source has the following impedance. RS is 0.4 ohm R 0.6, ohm RM 150 ohm, XS 1.4 ohm, X 2 ohm, XM 20 ohm, XBR 0.5 ohm. The slip is known to be 2.2% core loss of 40 watt SGL 457 watt and rotational loss for 450 watt. Determine synchronous speed and rotor speed. B. Input power the rotor RPI. C. Power loss on the coil. D. Power loss that is converted to mechanical power. E. Output power and power losses. F. Motor efficiency. This is the answer of the examples. Application of synchronous motors industry. The reason for using a synchronous motor for these devices is because this motor requires a DC current for power generation and has a low initial torque, and therefore a synchronous motor is suitable for initial use for low loads. Synchronous motors are used for application where precise and constant speed is required. Low power application of this motor include a positioning machine. Application of synchronous asynchronous motor in industry. The general feature of an AC motor is a rotating magnetic field that is regulated by stator winding. This concept is illustrated in a three-phase motor by considering three coils which are placed in a 120 electric phase shift. Each coil is connected to one phase from the three-phase power source. As shown in the picture above, if the three-phase current passes through the coil, the influence of rotating magnetic field occurs through the inside of the stator core. The speed of the rotating magnetic field depends on the number of stator poles and the frequency of the power source. So that is my PowerPoint. Thank you. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.